Hey, it's Fred with all kinds of classics. We're here at the shop and just landed another project. It's a customer job. This one will be a 55 Crown Victoria in the trailer. Looked at it. At this point, it's still locked up. The keys are in the truck, and I'm wrapping for the day. But I just brought it home, brought the owner and the painter over, and wanted to show them some of the stuff that I do, some of the capabilities, that kind of thing. So in the next few videos, we'll take a look at what's behind these tin walls. Okay, this is what we have. This car that's evidently been in and out of a few body shops. It's in prime, but it looks like there's work to go on. The current gentleman that has it, the shop that has it, is he got the hood design and fitment to work well. It's a nice setup. He did a good job on mounting it up and building up a system to get it to settle in and latch. It does set down really nice. It's a high performance 428 dynoed and built by a custom engine builder, local to here. Nice setup. Very nice setup. What he wants me to do is change the coil out for a chrome coil, which is fine, a high energy coil. Mount the carburetor and basically wire the whole thing, get this thing running. Not just the engine compartment though, I'm wiring the entire body. So there's a harness in the big box on the floor, the white box, plus the various smaller harnesses that come with each of the components. Looks like an ABS, Edelbrock ABS carb is going on it. I've got to pull the cables from the battery forward. A little bit of fabrication. He wants a chrome ringed OEM Ford, circa, I don't know, probably 70s or 80s. Gas pedal. Should be thrown in here somewhere. I don't remember where it is. It might be in my truck. Electric fans. It's got a pusher. I can bring that down. He didn't spare a lot on chrome. It's pretty well built. It's a 9-inch Ford. I peeked underneath before I pulled it off the trailer. Very nice undercarriage, done well. Chassis black, enamel, very similar to what I've done on this. It's getting all new interior. Got to wire up the aftermarket AC system. Tie in the gauges. Gauges are somewhere. I think they're in that box there. So it should be a fun project. Just getting it ready. It's got to be able to run and drive. That's the thing. The body shop said, do whatever you can do, but remember, I got to pull the front clip off still. I got to do this, that, and the other thing. So I'll be conservative on tying the front end of the wiring harness out. I'll run the rest. The pigtails will be ready, and the vehicle will be ready to roll. I'll have the engine harness in. I'll drive it out. Got to do all the fluids on it. Check everything. The engine was built in 19, finished in 19. Came off the dyno in 2019. It's 2024, so that's 5 years of setting. So I got to make sure that everything kind of fires up and does what it's supposed to do. So this is the current customer project at AKK. All right, here's what I got going. Started on the wiring harness. I got everything sorted. I got things labeled to remember that I need, don't forget the reverse light on the tail light. Don't forget the license plate light, brake and tail light. Don't forget the fuel. Don't forget the interior lights. So on and so forth all the way around. But this kit comes with several harnesses, some connectors. I had to order a bunch of connectors, did that this morning. But I need to get this fuse panel mounted, and I don't want to penetrate the firewalls, so what I did is I just formed up a piece that grabs one of the original hood mounts. Now this hood, obviously, as you've noticed, is not opening original. And so there's the hood channel, but it's got a glide that they roll on and then hook underneath, okay? But there is an available bolt hole right in there. And I'm using it. Oh no, it's right. It's underneath. That's a hood bolt. And underneath it, there you can see it, is the other hole. So I formed the impression for it to sit in there, bent this thing up, and now that'll mount on there. It's not painted or anything yet. Just some number 10 screws, weld nuts to mount that onto there. Okay. I'm grabbing one of the steering wheel bolts, one of the firewall bolts that supports the steering wheel, and one of those bolts. This is just 14 gauge. It's not real thick, but it's easy to form and shape, and will certainly support a fuse box. I placed it out an inch so that wiring can go behind it if necessary to chase down or chase out the sides. So that's the project, to try to get this wiring harness in. And that's where I'm at this juncture. I'll keep plugging away at it, and wiring is one of those things that's as hard to watch as a guy doing body work on a car for days and days and days. All right, so basically what I've done so far is I got the headlight switch, which gives you my tail lights. I got the turn signals, column information that gives me the brake lights and turn signals. I sorted and ran them back. Another harness has a fuel sending unit. The nice thing on this is anywhere in the vehicle. Come on. You are. Look at that. It's printed every 6 or so inches all the way down the wire. So you'll know, at that end or at this end. Now, I'm starting at the farthest corner, working my way this way, and then heading up. So this particular harness runs a separate right tail light from the left tail light, as well as your turn and brake. But this harness does not come with a reverse light, and this vehicle has reverse. So I'm pulling a new spool of wire here to run along with it. And at this point, and I'm using this loom, this here loom. This is what came with the vehicle. It's some pretty good stuff, It's nice and flexible, and it's just a coil, and it rolls up on itself. It does a good job because you can turn the seam easily, and it looks very good. So that's tucked up in the original chase. This tab broke off, so I quick welded him on, hit him with some black. Didn't get too, well, where am I at here? Didn't get too much of a heat signature, but you can see where I cleaned it up. You know, that'll have to be dusted, but that's the paint guy. Anyway, grab my license plate light wire. He chases down here into a grommet, and then I'll do my connections for the right tail light, and then I'm going to put a connector in back. Then I'll run the wiring all the way up, put a connector in front, and in that event, then I'm not working my way to way too much wire for a cut and splice. So the only soldering I've done so far is tying in the license plate light with the right tail light, and it's a pretty nice setup in the sense that it's kind of intuitive in the sense that you can, you know which wire is which, so you can stand on this end and sort it without a continuity test or anything like that. When I wire, for example, when I did this guy here, the fuel tank, in this case this is enclosed tubing. This isn't a wrap, this is stuff that I have that I used on the 1930, and then I go, as I terminate it though, I come up with some heat shrink, and that goes in almost to the sender. In the case of the sender, I don't like, if you remember on that guy, when I wired the sender, I wire a separate ground to the fuel tank. I don't rely on straps, so I grab one of the rings. I don't know how many of you guys do that, or if you're going to say, well, duh, but I've seen them where they're just running the fuel sending unit and not using a ground. So somewhere over here I will do a ground lug, and I'll bring the ground wire for the tail lights, reverse lights, all over to a ground lug. The reverse lights will be a solder connection, ground solder connection, or a split there and there, but aside from that, they'll come together, and I might pull one ground lug, or I might tie them out in the connector. Don't know yet. They'll just kind of see how it plays out as I get to that side. But as soon as I get the back end wired, then I'll chase up and we'll get that end done. Then we'll go to the front end, which is a little more involved. You got horns and fan and headlights and blinkers, you know, and all that. So, and then I'll move to the engine harness, but I'll get all this tied out then. So, keeping on going. All right. Weather pack connector is in. Fuel tank, ground. Cable is running up to the front. This guy has to lay in here. Connected there. There's the ground anchor to that body side. And again, that's the ground for the back. Wiring is out. Wiring is run. Took a while for me to find the Ford wire routing for this Crown Vic. But now with the floor shift, I can come in, grab the reverse, get a feed to that for reverse, neutral safeties there, and then I'll come up, and it is not enough wire to run the distance, so I will have to lengthen it. That's kind of strange though, because I didn't shorten anything. I mean, as much as like that for making tails and getting lengths correct, but I find that kind of strange. Anyway, that's okay, because I'll put a connector in front. I'll have some connections I'll be splitting. I'll do probably something under the console, or you know, something of that nature. But the headlight switch is here. That'll probably make it. You know what? That's what's holding me. Yeah, we'll have enough. We'll have enough. My headlight switch is like, it's sitting right there, but I'm, I got the beans and the wieners all mixed together here. So I think we're going to be safe, but I still got to do some, probably should do a connector at the firewall. This whole thing can pull out. I mean, I fished it through. I don't know. I'll think about it. Well, not a whole bunch more happening. All tangled up there. But I got the fan, the AC, choke, engine temp, starter, oil sending unit. I even got the generator light, just the light signal off the alternator, and of course the alternator. So this is the harness from the front. I do have the harness run from the tail lights up through a connector. I grabbed the brake light switches, turn signals and brake lights. So far those are in the column. Began punching down the feed for the reverse lights and the neutral safety switch. So those were in the rear harness. So the rear harness is done. I'm waiting on my bulkhead connector, which I will go into here. That goes right above the fuse panel. And then I'll start dressing my feed in. I've got another, this was probably the throttle cable or something like that. I'll have to check it out. That's just the back side of the mat. But I'm going to put the throttle linkage. I'm using a cable, so I don't know where that's going to route, but if that works for a power post, or somewhere in here is going to have to be a power post. I'm going to run the battery up to the positive, and all the high current feeds on the inside will bridge that, and then of course the starter lead and the alternator feed will go to that. So that'll go straight to the battery, but I'm going to have a power post in the firewall. That's the best way to keep this thing cleaned up and looking good. And that's basically what I've gotten so far. I haven't started wiring the interior because it just gets too confusing. There's just too much stuff laying around. So I punched out of that, and I'm starting on the buck for the running boards. We did attempt to roll them in the die. I had to dolly it out, but the die started making a mark in it, and they started folding over the die, so it didn't work. So I mean, it got a good start, but so now I'm just going to have to hammer the lips over. I got both of them started, right? So now I just gotta see this one. I never dollied this one. So I'll put them over. I'll make this. I made it out of MDF, 3/4 inch MDF stacked. I had a piece of oak or plywood. It just got an old veneer on this top, and that's what I'm going to do to dolly it off. This, of course, was well, it's 5/8 is what, 10/30 seconds, or no, 10/16. So what is that, 20-30 seconds? Yeah, so this was like 20-30, this was like 19-30 seconds, so I had to take just my belt sander and flush that out. But it's plenty thick. I mean, that's 1 inch and 7/16, right? And I got that flange is 1 1/4 inches. So that's what I'm going after today. Oh, that's all that 55 stuff. He's putting a console in it. That's why it's got the floor shift, and that came out of a, I don't know, late 60s, probably a T-Bird or a Mustang or something like that, or maybe they're just the same. Anyway, it's got a nice tall armrest on it, so it'll work good in there. And That's the progress though. It's got the aftermarket AC unit, aftermarket windshield wiper. Those were installed, just getting the wiring sorted on those. But it's going very well. It's coming along and we are going to have fun with it. Just got to wait for the parts to come in so I can continue on it. Let's see what we got cooking in the oven. Ladder fell. Real good. Real good. Anyway, parts. This is the gas pedal on the 55. That's got to get cleaned up, but I stripped it and powder coated it, and then I made the mount for the circuit panel. I just powder coated. Whee! Hey guys, this is Fred from AKK. I just wanted to show you the mounted bracket. So I'll try to get some light on there. Okay, so this bolt here, and that's the bracket that attaches to that bolt. The other bolt is behind the column. This is bent over to allow 1-inch spacing so wiring can be routed behind it. I took this off and this is what was in the oven. I powder coated it. The other item that I powder coated was the gas pedal, which is yet to be mounted. I'm just now getting into that because the throttle cable came in. So this is the inside of the 55. Looks like it's sprayed with I don't know, that gator stuff, lizard skin. And they started with the sound barrier, soundproofing. They got the classic Auto Industries AC. I did it column, and I didn't do a lot on wiring today. What I did today was a lot of goofy odds and ends. So I got the bulbs in, or the sockets in rather. So I've got those in, soldered and heat shrunk. License plate mount is in the wiring. Other side. And then these 55 Fords, they have a hose that comes from the top of the tank, goes up through the inner fender, and routes up. There's a clip right there, and a clip right there. And it routes up and chases down and around, comes out. This case goes underneath the wiring, routes down, and goes through a rubber grommet and pokes out right there. So when you're filling fuel, it goes out there. But that in the 50s, I did a little research on it. That was Ford's solution to a rollover, so the tank would still vent, but in the event of a rollover, the fuel would still spill to the outside of the car. So looking from the bottom, you can see the line goes in. There's a flange right there. Those two number 10s screwed through the flange to secure it and seal it. tank routing, and in the trunk, and up and out. So that was a hell of a project, because to get that to route, there's a curtain that goes on the trunk side there, but to get that to properly route was really a monster, because it had to follow that contour all the way down. Be tucked up out of the way. So that got done. Oh, I played a little on the plasma table, because the throttle cable came in, so I cut this bracket and then I polished it. Kind of copied it off the internet, but I got my own dimensions so that I can begin mounting the throttle cable. I got some of the hoses covered with that stuff, because that's what the guy wants, right? He wants to look pretty. So that is much of today. Some of it I didn't play on the 30 at all today, because I just wasn't in it. So this makes up the accomplishments of the day. Tomorrow I'll probably start the power seat wiring, clean up some of this, get the throttle cable run, maybe even get the transmission coolant lines run, some of that stuff. It's a lot of monotonous, not goofy, it needs to be done. Oh, and also it has one of them aftermarket, very similar to the 1930 emergency brake runs. But whomever installed it, I'm not criticizing them, but they didn't position it so that it wouldn't come in contact with the drive shaft. So it was coming in contact with the drive shaft. So I modified it, made a couple of brackets in the back to hold it, to carry it right. And now there's no contact with the drive shaft. A few other odds and ends, a ground wire. Always remember, since this is a rear battery too, you got to have a ground cable. You see that stud sticking out there? You can see the ground cable running over, in this case, to the bell housing. So the engine to frame ground is there. I will have to do something on the firewall to the engine for another ground wire. You got to ground the body. You got to ground the engine. I'll probably pull another ground cable from the frame to the body, probably in the rear. The thing is that with a rear mounted battery, that cable is going to go to the frame on the negative side, and you want to make sure that you've got it. Well, in that case, that cable up there is a number 4 to the starter, but it's only about not even 8 inches, 7-8 inches long. Number 4 seems a little light, but we're going to have the other ground contacts in too. So everything needs to be properly grounded so that you have the path of least resistance in the starter works, and you're not grounding through the bolts and everything else on the vehicle. And you need to have a good ground contact. So test them with a voltmeter and make sure they're good. The last thing, I guess I forgot, I did wire in the headlight sockets. These are cool. So they're standard run-of-the-mill headlight sockets, but they're close tolerance and they're high temp units. I did weather packs. This is the ground, and this is the high and low beam. And the reason why the ground is on a connector versus this side, get that out of the way, versus this side where the ground is not on a connector. This ground will actually attach probably to one of these, directly to the body. But the wiring for the driver's side comes up through here and then grabs the harness. This is the wiring for the passenger side and eventually the fan wiring. got a balled up tape there so I know where the point of entry is going to be. So on that side, I'm sharing the ground feed with, let me think about that. I'm not connecting it on the inside. It pulls through. And there's a reason for it. I just can't remember. I don't think I'm sharing it though. Yes, I am. I'm sharing it with the turn signal. No, I'm not. It's right there. It's right there. So that's going to go on the radiator support. That's going to go on the radiator support. The headlights are a little higher current. They're a little heavier wire, so I'm isolating the ground. But I didn't mount this one inside. And what winds up happening is that when you pull the harness back completely, you could, of course, can disconnect that, but it needs to get through that hole. On this side, the reason for the connector is it needs to get through that hole. So the whole harness can then be removed. Once I get the bulkhead connector in, the whole harness can be removed. I also gathered up the engine wiring. They're gathered and ready, but everything's just right here. I'm just moving it around. I'll straighten it out, but the last thing I need is that, which should be coming in tomorrow or Thursday, is that positive terminal that's going to be mounted on the firewall, so that the starter, the connection to the starter will come up through there. On the other side will be the run to the battery, but also will provide a terminal on both sides of the firewall so that I can grab a battery hot on either side. The fuse box, for example, will run over to it on the interior side. On this side, if there's a need for a battery hot. It can also serve as a jumper. You know, if you grab a ground to right here and scratch it, and then to there, you can actually jump the car under the hood then. So, let's see. That's about it. That looks like spaghetti, but it's not. I haven't even touched the 30 today. This case, I moved a bunch of stuff over so I could clear out the plasma tape, but this is sitting exactly where it was yesterday, and that is sitting where it was at the end of the day yesterday as well. So I still want to get on this, and maybe tomorrow is the day that I do. I really should just take a break from this because parts are just kind of trickling in, and you know, I'm starting and stopping, and then I get to thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. Just sit and ponder. So I'm going to stop doing that. But who knows? Who knows what tomorrow brings, but I'll get after it, and we'll see how the day goes. Hey guys, here's where I'm at. I got the carb mounted. I did fab up used my plasma cutter, fabbed up a couple of brackets, trans kick down, throttle. Made it out of stainless, all full of fingerprints, but it'll hold the wire loom probably on the other side. And got the throttle cable routed through the firewall, held down. We are so close to the firewall right now that I had to do a loop, but that's okay. It keeps the stress out of it, and the cable works beautiful. But then I had to get the fuel or the throttle over to the I gotta try to hold this phone correctly, so I had to make a bracket. It looks like it's at an angle because it is, to keep it up and down, and then get to the cable, which is 2 inches over. So what I did was went in and fabbed up 14 gauges, hammered over a piece of rod to get that S shape in there, and then where Ford had a U shape with a hole and a pin through it, this has a center pin with a U shape that goes onto it. So that's how she kicks over now and grabs the throttle. I just finished painting it, so I'm letting it cure out right now. I backed it right at the weld seam, where I shaped and welded it on. It's going to turn out nice. Well, it's been a strong day. I was able to get that on. No, I'm waiting for, since they don't make, Spectre doesn't make clamps for these anymore, or the Beauteous nuts for them. I am going to go with a 3/4 inch band, but I'm getting some heat shrink to put on the ends of them, just so that they look nice. You can see now I've got, if you remember the other video, I've got all the routings done. Now I've got the starter lead running up the trans tunnel up to the terminal. I've got the entire front wire harness now in tubing and routed. Of course, on the other side of that, we have, we have the battery pause. Battery neg. Battery negative goes down through a grommet. Everything is in a grommet. Nothing's going to get chafed. Battery pause is held by a clamp, so that you got to remember, you'll be removing this from the trunk. You'll just be able to push it down and on. This will be sitting in the trunk. You'll just be push it down and on. Connected to the frame. I'm not going to lift it up right now. Connected to the frame. Frame's connected to the body underneath here. I think I already showed this, but the frame is connected to the engine right here. I need to run one more ground from the engine to the body, so that all the grounds are done. Oh, gas pedal is in. Right there. It hooked to the carb. There's no carb spring on it. Dialed up to the chain. Turned out really nice. We are making progress. Oh, and I forgot to turn this light off. This is a battery operated one, not a charging one. Ah, this stupid thing. There. But a strong day. Car's been up and down many times. Just getting all the cables routed and everything tied out. So I don't know if I showed that already. All the wiring is in. I got the headlight sockets, and only thing I'm waiting on now are the front blinker, turn signal, and driving light sockets. For whatever reason, they shipped two, and then they two are being delayed. So carb is mounted. Yeah, I think I already covered that. So kick down cable for the trans will need to be routed. The trans lines are coming. Those are coming pretty soon. I'll be able to wet the thing down. I suppose I got to bleed the brakes. I got to go through all the lines. Don't know if any of the lines were tightened. And then go in and bleed the brakes. Hopefully my sweetie will help me. And then start the dash wiring, which really is quite simple. You know, you're just driving all your units. Bulkhead connector is going to be the end of next week, so it'll be sitting here for a little while. But as long as stuff is coming in, I'm gonna get it done. I was waiting to get the front end done. I was waiting actually on the 12 gauge wire. I got myself a bunch of spools, but of course the fan was red and black, and the connectors. I should show you that. I should show you that. I don't know what they are, but these gray guys, these are slick weather packs. This will need a clamp right there, but they're slick weather pack connectors. These are good. They're just hard to assemble. These are spectacular. So, for what it's worth, they even got a little place for an inset. But anyway, it was a good day. Really good day. Thanks for watching, guys. All right, moving right along on the engine compartment. So, I bolted the cover on. This normally is oriented, for a dual quad. This is a single. But you can see with the space there, you can't clock it that way. The owner's specific instructions were he wants Cobra on the driver's side when you open the hood. Okay, that's what we're doing. Engine harness you can see is in. Alternator wire is running up to the bat. Bat cable is running down to the starter. Got a starter connection right here. You can disconnect to pull that harness out. You can pull the engine harness out once we get to the bulkhead connector for the engine harness. That'll come around and underneath, or this is the engine harness. Yeah, there's a wire right there. That'll come out and go to the bulkhead connector at about that junction right there where that wire is. And this would be the front end, headlights, blinkers, fan. The big one is the fan, the red one. So it's a real pretty engine compartment. You can see it in the polished aluminum. What do you call that? Under hood deal. But she's a pretty one. And now at this point, I got the dash front end to wire, and all the fluids. So I think I will proceed in checking all the brake lines, because he said, as evidenced by, he witnessed a leak. So we'll have to get into that. You can bleed that. Engine is still full of oil, and the oil looks good. Transmission has oil in it, but there's no coolant lines run. They're coming in the mail. The distributor vacuum line I've got right here, and I pulled the sheathing tight and put silicone on it. I'm just letting that cure out. That holds it on a little better. This style of clamp was not available in this 2 1/4 inch OD radiator hose. That's a big radiator hose. So what I did instead, they had the sheathing, but they didn't have the clamps. So we went to the band clamps, and I got some 3-to-1 heat shrink with adhesive. It actually has adhesive on the interior surface, so when you heat it, it bonds itself to the surface. I'm not particularly fond of these because there's little hairs, the whole sheathing. I don't mind it. I've used it. It's okay. It matches the braided lines to a certain degree under the hood, and that's specifically what the owner wants. The customer is always right. So, of course, I copied that on the throttle cable and a braided cable and all that. But she sure is looking good. It looks really good under in the engine bay. You can see the radiator is polished. The power steering reservoir is polished. Everything's polished under here. And that's why I kept with the theme when I was doing the carburetor mount. And I made a little, you can see underneath here, even the carb spring retainer. I polished that. So everything looks pretty. So now we'll move on. And it's kind of one of those things. I went to the enclosed trailer that it comes in, wants the car wired, and I see it's got a power seat. Okay, got a power seat. I go to the trailer, I'm digging around. It says window mechanisms. Open it up. It's power windows. So there's quite a fair amount of interior wiring that still needs to be done. Interior wiring isn't difficult. Well, at the same time, that's what I got left on that part of it. So right now I'm going to go on to fluids, get her up in the air, and start getting that addressed. Well, I hopped onto this today because a number of things. I wanted to simply get after it. The bulkhead connector came in and I wanted to get the wiring done. So there is the bulkhead connector. That side splits off to the engine, that side out to the firewall. And then I took the laborious, horrendous amount of time and wired in the fuse box. You can see the bulkhead just above it. Pulled all the wires. This is all dash wires. They need to be dressed yet, but that's all the dash wires. Even the overhead. Checked it all out, and I had one. So this kit, this is a Francis kit. In here, these two green wires were next to each other, and I reversed them. One is the left, the left turn signal. The other one is the horn. And so my very first test was to try the hazard lights. And guess what happened? Beep, beep, beep. I immediately disconnected it. And of course, I didn't run to diagnose right away. I thought I sat underneath the dash and I must have figured I routed the horn wire from there to the... Anyway, I was looking at the flasher relay saying, well, if I unplug the flasher relay, the horn goes off. And right next to it is the horn relay. Until I got out, unplugged the horns, turned the flashers on, and noted that this light wasn't going on. The other three were on the flasher, on the four-way. Then I came back up and looked on the fuse box, and I said, I bet you that left turn signal wire is green. Pulled out the wiring diagram. Sure enough, it's green. Horn's green. I flipped them. So anyway, that was it. All the rest of it went well. Now I'm checking the tranny fluid. Got to go get antifreeze. Filled the vent to the carburetor. Got to get some fuel to put in the fuel tank. I forgot to put that on here. Got to get an oil filter, oil. I bled the brake fluid to replace mine. And then we'll probably give this thing a whirl. One of the things that I should share with you is, as I go through this, hopefully advice, but a couple of things that I checked. Number one, I checked that the module had voltage to it, and it does. I'm probing off the alternator up to my box. I have a tachometer on the tack wire that I ran inside, and I unplugged, as I charged it, unplugged the battery contact, or the fan switch, and touched it to the side of the switch to make sure the fan would engage. This goes through gaskets and everything. I know it's bolted, but it goes through gaskets. I wanted to make sure I had fan contact so I didn't have gremlins when I started. So all that being said, we are in a position to fire this puppy up, listen for crazy noises, and get her up to RPM. Power steering fluid. Yes. So I never even looked in there. Didn't even look. Don't even know how this comes off. There it goes. billet aluminum. Fine threaded. Yeah, so all that would be a good idea to have all of that taken care of. I don't want to tighten it, I just want to start it. There. Okay, so electrically, we're ready to fire. Even check the neutral safety switch. In neutral, in park. Check the reverse lights. Everything is working. So, that wiring harness made it easy in the sense that all the wires were labeled. That saves a lot of time. In the sense that the colors are all the same. Yeah, you know, like for this, I built my wiring harness. I used an OEM from the Dodge, and then I built it out, and I built a wiring color indicator. The OEMs are good in the sense that if you have that, and you know the color, you know where it's going. So I identified it. But anyway, that's what I've got going. All right, had her up, had her running. You can see the front pulley there. She took off that much of the serpentine belt, and it appears to me, you can't see it from here, but from the bottom, you can see the idler arm right there. But it's up against that side of the idler pulley with the gap on that side, and every other pulley it's sitting on the back of the pulley. So it looks like a spacer on the idler is in order. Problem is, that's a cover, decorative cover on the idler. And she's all watered up and everything, you know. It is what it is. Can't take the bolt off the back, you know. Can't move the idler that way. So, off de Maria. We'll have to figure that out. Anyway, I'm testing out. I'm getting the oil temp switch in and some of those miscellaneous things, but I'm testing out the system. Got all the wiring kind of roughed in up here. I'll gather it and clean it up, but it runs good. Ran the transmission through the gears, topped off all the fluids. Everything seems to be in order. Did get the transmission kick down cable in. Got that on. These Fords, they kick down on oh, come on, full throttle. And this is designed to just slide in and out of here. It's just kind of a interesting deal. Anyway, but it's effective and it works. Very happy with it so far. Looking like I'm about ready to wrap this one up. I'll have to call and get a status on what they want to do there. Because that appears that the hood would have to come off, radiator out, all that kind of thing. So